The storm outside hadn't stopped. It howled against the windows of the academy, shaking the old glass panes as if trying to force its way in. The building was empty now, the applause, the audience, the chatter long gone. But in one room, light still burned. Adrian sat alone in the practice hall, drenched in sweat, his fingers hovering above the piano keys. The same phrase repeated over and over, the final measure of her silent note. He couldn't stop playing it. Every time he reached the ending, it sounded wrong. Too clean. Too false. The dissonance in his head wouldn't fade. The door creaked open. He turned sharply, but there was no one there. Just the wind whispering through the hallway. Still, something made him uneasy, the faint smell of sandalwood, the scent he remembered from long ago. He rose, walking slowly to the door, and froze. There, on the piano bench, lay an old cassette tape. No label. Just a single note written on the inside of the cover, "Listen to what you buried." He stared at it for a long moment, his throat tightening. It couldn't be real. He hadn't seen a cassette in years, not since the early days when he and Lila recorded their first compositions together. But something in him knew exactly what this was. He inserted it into the old tape player he kept in his office. The static crackled, and then, the sound of a piano. Faint, raw, unpolished. His own voice echoed faintly in the background, laughing, young. "Lila, that's brilliant. The shift in minor harmony, that's the emotion I needed." Her voice followed, soft and unsure. "Then don't forget to credit me this time." Silence. Then his laughter again, forced this time. "You know how this works. My name sells. Yours doesn't. It's our music, right?" The tape clicked off. Adrian stood frozen, staring at the wall. That conversation was supposed to be gone, erased years ago. He'd destroyed that recording himself. He turned back to the piano and saw it, written faintly across the keys in thin black ink, her handwriting. "Music remembers what people forget." His pulse hammered. He backed away, stumbling, his chest tightening as thunder crashed outside. Across the city, Lila sat in a dim cafe, her coat draped over the chair, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold before her. The rain traced ghostly lines down the window beside her. She watched the streetlights blur in the reflection and smiled faintly. She had sent the cassette anonymously. But that was only the first act. She pulled out her laptop and inserted a small drive. Dozens of files loaded on the screen, recordings, drafts, audio snippets of rehearsals that clearly showed her name attached to the Sonata of Glass. One by one, she uploaded them to a private folder, and then scheduled an automatic release for midnight. At exactly 12, the truth would go live to the world. Her hand hovered over the touchpad. Part of her trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was closure. Then, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "You always were terrible at keeping secrets." Her blood ran cold. She turned. Adrian stood in the doorway, his hair damp from the rain, his suit soaked through. How he'd found her, she didn't know, but the look in his eyes was something between desperation and fury. "Still dramatic as ever," he said, stepping closer. "You really thought a few files would ruin me?" "I don't need to ruin you," she said calmly. "You've been doing that yourself for years." He laughed, a hollow sound. "You think anyone cares about some recordings? You think they'll listen to you, the woman who vanished after one scandal? You don't exist, Lila. Then you have nothing to fear." For a moment, neither moved. The cafe around them seemed suspended in time. The hum of rain, the flicker of neon lights from the street, all of it blurred into a single, trembling stillness. Then he leaned closer, voice low. I didn't just take your music. I perfected it. The world loves my version. Yours? Too raw. Too sentimental. That's why I left you behind. Lila's eyes burned, but she didn't look away. And yet you can't stop playing it. You've lived inside the sound of what you stole for 10 years. Tell me, Adrian, does it still sound beautiful when you know where it came from? Something broke in his expression. For the first time, she saw fear beneath the arrogance. He turned to leave, but she spoke again, her voice soft, steady, final. At midnight, the world will know the truth. Every file, every note, every word. It's over. He stopped at the door, his back to her. You think you can control the story? He said. You never could. You're just noise, Lila. Then he walked out into the rain. Midnight. The files went live. Within minutes, her name began spreading online, Lila Hahn, the real composer of the Sonata of Glass. Music critics were already sharing comparisons, analyzing old recordings, tracing timelines. Her name, once buried, was resurfacing everywhere. In the middle of it all, one video began trending, a recording of Sophia's concert. Viewers noticed something uncanny, that her melody mirrored an unpublished draft of Lila's, dated years before Adrian's first release. By dawn, headlines read, Scandal at the Choi Academy, Stolen Compositions Exposed. But the morning brought no peace. When Lila checked her inbox, there was a new message. No name, no subject. Just a single link. She clicked it. A video opened. Grainy security footage. The Academy's hall, last night. Adrian at the piano. The timestamp, an hour after their confrontation. He was playing her silent note. His hands moved slower, weaker. He stopped halfway through, looked up, and whispered something she could barely hear. Then he stood, walked to the window, and disappeared from view. The clip ended. Lila's hands trembled. She replayed it, watching the frame where he vanished. The camera showed only the storm outside, flashes of lightning on the glass. No body. No sound. Just silence. She leaned back, her breath uneven. Somewhere deep inside her, she felt the faintest flicker of something she hadn't expected, not triumph, not peace. Guilt. Because silence, once again, had taken more than it gave. Outside, the morning light broke across the water. The city was alive with scandal, her name everywhere, but in the reflection of the glass window, she could still see him. Standing by the piano, smiling faintly, like he used to when music still meant something pure. Lila closed her eyes and whispered to the empty cafe, You took my voice. And still, you're the one who couldn't live without the sound. The rain had stopped. But the silence that followed wasn't gentle. It was heavy, endless, the kind of silence that remembers. And somewhere in that silence, faintly, a piano began to play again. The sky outside was the color of steel, clouds heavy with the last traces of the storm. Morning bled into the city slowly, as though even the sun hesitated to rise after the night that had unfolded. Lila sat in her apartment, still wearing the same coat from last night. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the fridge and the metronome ticking softly on her piano. It had been ticking for hours, an echo she hadn't noticed until now. Her laptop screen glowed on the table. Notifications flooded in news headlines, music blogs, reaction videos. The scandal had exploded overnight. Adrian Choi's legacy questioned. The stolen sonata. The forgotten composer speaks again. But she hadn't spoken. Not once. She hadn't given a statement, hadn't posted, hadn't defended herself. The truth was already out there, and for once, her silence did the talking. Still, the video haunted her. The footage of Adrian at the piano, his final song, the empty space where he vanished. The internet had already found it, of course. It was being shared across platforms with captions like "his last performance," and "did guilt finally destroy him?" Lila had watched it a dozen times, each time searching for something different. A clue. A sign. Maybe even redemption. But the recording ended the same way every time, with him gone, swallowed by the storm. She pressed pause and whispered to herself, "You always needed a dramatic exit." But the words didn't sound as sharp as she wanted. They sounded tired. Her phone rang, breaking the quiet. She almost didn't answer, but the name on the screen froze her hand. Sophia Choi. She hesitated, then swiped. Sophia? There was silence at first. Then a small voice, fragile and trembling. "Miss Lila, are you watching the news?" Lila's throat tightened. "Yes, sweetheart. I saw. They're saying my daddy did something bad. They're saying he's gone." Lila closed her eyes. The sound of that child's voice, so pure, so small, cut deeper than any headline. "Sometimes," she said softly, "grown-ups make mistakes that don't go away easily. But that doesn't mean everything about them was bad." Sophia sniffed. "He said you were his best friend. Is that true?" The words hit her like a key pressed too hard. Best friend. That had been true, once. Before the theft. Before the silence. Before everything had turned into this game of ghosts. "Yes," Lila said quietly. "A long time ago." "Can you come get me?" the girl whispered. "They said I can't go home." Lila froze. "Where are you now?" "The academy. They said someone will take me later, but I don't want to stay. It's scary here." Her pulse quickened. Without thinking, she grabbed her keys and coat. "Stay where you are, Sophia. I'm coming." The academy stood in eerie stillness when she arrived. The storm had passed, but puddles still mirrored the gray sky. Police tape fluttered near the front entrance, and the halls inside smelled faintly of rain and disinfectant. Sophia sat on the stairs clutching her violin case, eyes red from crying. When she saw Lila, she ran to her and buried her face in her coat. "Shoo, you're safe," Lila murmured, wrapping her arms around her. Behind them, two officers murmured to each other. Lila overheard fragments, no sign of him, possible fall, no body recovered. The same refrain, over and over. No body recovered. She led Sophia to her car, settling her gently in the passenger seat. The girl's fingers clutched the strap of her violin case as though it were life itself. "Miss Lila," she said suddenly, "when Daddy played last night, he said something weird before he started." Lila turned to her. "What did he say?" "He said, maybe she'll finally hear me." The words landed like a stone in her chest. She looked at Sophia, really looked at her this time, the shape of her eyes, the slope of her nose, the way she held herself. There was so much of Adrian in her. But there was something else too. Something quieter, deeper. Maybe it was the part of him that had once loved honestly. Maybe it was what he'd tried to tell her in that final moment. Lila reached out and brushed a tear from the girl's cheek. "Do you want to play something?" Sophia blinked. "Now?" Yes, Lila said gently. Sometimes, when words hurt, music helps us understand. Sophia hesitated, then opened her violin case. She tuned quickly, her small hands steadying with the familiarity of the motion. Then, slowly, she began to play. It was her silent note. The melody floated into the morning air, soft, broken, unfinished. But it was beautiful. Innocent. Sophia played it differently than either of them ever had. There was no bitterness in her version, no rivalry. Just truth. And for the first time, Lila heard her song as something new. Not a weapon. Not revenge. A bridge. When the last note faded, Lila's eyes burned with tears she didn't wipe away. That was perfect, she whispered. Sophia looked up at her. Was that your song? Yes, Lila said. But now, I think it belongs to you. The girl smiled faintly, shyly. Lila started the car. Come on. Let's go somewhere far from here. Hours later, the city buzzed with the noise of scandal and speculation. Social media pulsed with theories. Some believed Adrian had fled the country, others whispered about suicide, others still thought it was all a publicity stunt. But far from all of it, by the quiet coastline, Lila sat on a weathered bench with Sophia beside her. The sun was setting now, the waves glimmering gold. Lila handed the girl a folded sheet of paper. Keep this safe, she said. What is it? The original version of her silent note. The one your father never changed. Sophia unfolded it, tracing the notes with her finger. Can I learn it? You already have, Lila said. Every time you play, you remind the world that music doesn't belong to one person, it belongs to whoever listens with their heart. The wind lifted her hair, carrying the scent of the sea and the faintest echo of a piano in the distance. Maybe it was memory. Maybe it was him. Either way, she smiled faintly and whispered to the horizon, You were right, Adrian. I finally heard you. As the sun disappeared, the girl began to hum the melody again. Lila closed her eyes. This time, there was no pain in the sound. Only peace. And in that fragile silence between the waves and the wind, the world finally felt like it was listening.